Hello and welcome to this Business New Zealand update. I'm Grant Walker and I'm here with Business New Zealand CEO Kirk Hope. Well, the ANZ Business Outlook survey for April shows that firms are pretty much feeling, well, a bit more upbeat, but is that what you're seeing?
Well, I mean, as we've seen all along, it's different for different parts of the economy. Although, given that the Trans-Tasman bubble has now opened, even some parts of the economy that were doing it tough are probably doing it better. We've just had the school holidays, so a lot of people travelling around. So those tourism businesses might have seen some revenue where they hadn't seen a huge amount previously. We haven't had an alert level increase for a month or so now, so those are really important things. And business activity being able to be consistent, and I think there's still some pretty good demand even in retail. So yeah, I mean, by and large, it reflects kind of what we're hearing from businesses.
We'll talk about that travel from Australia shortly, but that same survey also found that people are not expecting the government's efforts to cool house prices to turn around the housing market anytime soon. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think. Obviously, the Minister of Finance has given himself some more powers to influence the lending side.
Yeah, with the Reserve Bank. Yeah.
With the Reserve Bank. Will it in the end make much of a difference? I mean, we've always, like everyone, we've just maintained it. You can focus on these demand side measures, but until you fix the supply side, it's not really going to have an impact on price. So, I mean, the key thing is how many more houses are being built than there were last year, and clearly we had a bit of a stop-start year last year, so there's quite a few more houses being built. Are they in the places where they need to be? Some of them are. Is there enough of them? Probably not. Is there anything that the Minister of Finance can do about that? Not really. I mean, it's really about ensuring that there's consistency and certainty within the construction sector, and people can see, the developers can see their way through and getting their developments consented. And that's probably one of the bigger problems, is the council consenting processes, which slow things up inordinately and create a huge expense for those developers.
Also, a couple of weeks back, the Reserve Bank sort of hinted to banks not to put interest rates up, and yet one bank in particular already put long-term interest rates up slightly. Where do you think the trend's going to go?
I think it's actually really difficult to tell, and economists, as usual, are not in agreement about this. I mean, I think Kiwibank came out the other day and said, for example, they couldn't see they didn't see the long-term interest rate trend being upwards. So they were more stable on that. So I would see, probably, depending on what happens with supply chain issues, if, for example, we start to see a lot of inflationary pressure, and that's, we're seeing a bit of that because of the supply chain stuff. Bear in mind the Reserve Bank now also have to take into account housing in the way that they're thinking about the OCR. So we might see the OCR move, but interest rates, which are primarily driven by wholesale interest rate markets, don't move much at all.
Yeah, let's talk about the fact that there is those cost pressures coming on to businesses now. How long can they hold out before they're going to have to put prices up?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've talked about it before, Grant, and there are quite a lot of those things coming down. And on top of that, you have those supply chain issues where, less boats might not be coming here, stuff is held up on wharves. So that will all have an impact on prices at some point.
Yeah, because, I mean, a lot of the media are saying, stand by for price rises, but they haven't really yet. So they're going to come at some point, aren't they?
Yeah, well, I think there's only so long that businesses can continue to absorb costs as well. So, we are expecting to see a bit of that.
All right, Trans-Tasman bubble. Right, a third more travellers coming into New Zealand than going the other way, which is good for us, but are businesses seeing the flow-on effect, bearing in mind that it's not really the tourists yet?
Yeah, it's a good question. I was looking. I think the Australian school holidays are in June, and that's kind of when the beginning of ski season. So I see there's quite a lot of forward bookings for that part of the year, which I think is really good, and there's quite a lot of demand from Australian tourists for that. So I think whilst we've seen a lot of probably New Zealanders who live in Australia returning home for various reasons, to see family and so on and so forth, I think we'll start to see a lot more Aussie tourists come here in those peak sort of holiday seasons for things like skiing.
because already the airlines are cutting back their expected flights that they were expecting higher numbers. Do you think that they will pick up again, or do you think that we'll be at the reduced number?
No, I think what they'll do is their supply for planes will reflect demand, and if the demand's not there, then they're going to put additional planes on. So I do think, as I said before, that the school holiday period for Australia is looking pretty good for New Zealand.
Yeah, mind you, they don't quite overlap, so there could be about a 6 week or 5 to 6 week sort of good run there.
Yeah, hopefully.
All right, a couple of border breaches, a couple of people bending the rules. We've had one in Brisbane, we've had someone come in from the Cook Islands and then go straight into a plane to Perth. Are we going to worry about this?
Well, I mean, I think if for example, they come from the Cook Islands, I presume they're still COVID-free, so there's probably pretty low risk. I mean, the situation with Brisbane is a bit different. I mean, it's quite hard. I mean, you can understand why it took a while to get the so-called Trans-Tasman bubble working, because you've got different rules for different airports, and you've got the management of those airports in all of the states in Australia that you've got to deal with. So I'd hope not to see more of that, because we don't need 400 potentially COVID-infected people coming into New Zealand. That creates risks for us. At the same time, how big are those risks really? I mean, I think the reflection from the government was that they felt that it was quite a low-risk situation. But again, it only takes one person.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the vaccine rollout. Are we lagging behind? Because all the figures, according to where we are on the list in the world, we are lagging behind. But is that anything to worry about? Does it matter?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think what really matters is how quickly, once we start to get the vaccine and once we start to ramp up vaccinations, how quickly that can happen. And I think the government's anticipating being able to do quite a lot at scale. The question remains whether they can do that. We would hope they would be able to. One of the things that we've said as a business community is we'd like some more engagement on this issue, and because we feel like we've got a good part to play. I mean, people already get vaccinated or they get the flu jab in workplaces. So there are outsourced medical workforces that can participate in the vaccination rollout, potentially do it at scale if there are big sites, particularly in areas where there are large populations, and you can do families as well. So look, I think the question is not really how far we are behind. It's if we don't do it as quickly as we could, are we going to be impacted if other people in other parts of the world start to travel around and start to do other things and we're locked out of that because we're not fully vaccinated? I'm less concerned about that. I do think we will be in a pretty good place later this year.
Well, if you look at it this way, the government want 4.2 million people vaccinated. Currently it's only 60,000, so they're going to have to do something if they want to reach that number by the end of the year. They're going to have to use things other than DHBs.
Yeah, and I think what they'll be doing is learning a lot of lessons from the vaccine that they're rolling out now about what they can and can't do, what does and doesn't work, and which particular workforces in the medical area they can use to bolster the vaccination crew, if you like. So in some ways they're probably taking a lot of learnings from what they're doing now.
And we shouldn't panic really at the end of the day too, because if they find things wrong with vaccines overseas, by the time it comes here, it might be sorted out.
Yeah, I mean, you haven't seen any particular issues with the Pfizer
Not
vaccine.
with Pfizer, no, but the AstraZeneca one they have.
Yeah, exactly.
Zeneca,
But
yeah.
I think the backup is AstraZeneca for New Zealand. We've got enough on order, Pfizer vaccines on order to vaccinate the population. So, I mean, that's good news as well.